I get for watching the monkeys when I was little.
Okay. Ooh, excited.
Learn this.
Okay.
No, I'm serious. Actually, Wendy always puts this together for me when I can't figure it out.
I know, I'm not very good at it either.
What's that?
Oh, the thing.
The thing.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead.
The meeting will come to order. Let the roll call show that all members of the board are present. Our first item on the agenda is a motion to approve the agenda. Do we have a motion?
I move to approve the agenda.
I will second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? There's no opposition, so the motion passes. We will now proceed with the Pledge of Allegiance. We have so many. Tyler Ludwig, would you please lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes for the March 9th, 2022 business meeting, the special board meeting for executive session March 18th, 2022, the March 23rd, 2022 work study session, and the special board meeting of April 6th, 2022. I will go ahead and move that we approve these minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Then we have informational reports, starting with a summary of current events from Interim Superintendent Dr. Sweeney.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the governing board, and guests. I want to take a few minutes this evening and update you on the statewide testing that has been going on over the last couple of weeks. Principals have reported that overall things are going very well. Specifically, Mr. Hartman shared with me that the testing has been a positive experience for the high school students. They have been present and receptive to the testing throughout the process, and the high school staff have been very flexible and patient and great team players as schedules get modified and locations, etc. They have completed the science, ELA, and writing components and only have the reading and math portions left, which will be done tomorrow. Mr. Hartman also wanted me to publicly acknowledge Assistant Principal Jessica Kane for her work as testing coordinator and making all of those moving pieces fall into place. And according to Mr. Markle, the testing at the middle school is going very well also. He is mindful of not wanting to jinx the ongoing effort, but appreciates the great job by the staff and students. They've had 6 days of time dedicated to testing so far. They have completed the science, writing, math, and reading part 1 assessments, and they wrap up testing tomorrow with the reading part 2 assessment. So, with the ELA reading part 2 tomorrow. And last but not least, Principal Kevin Wilkinson from McDowell Mountain also reports things have gone well. They have a little bit lighter load at the elementary school, and they began with the writing assessment last week. They did an oral reading fluency test yesterday, and both the math and remaining reading portions are scheduled for next week. So I thought I'd share that with you since we used a study session to talk about where we were at with testing just not that long ago. It also looks like, as we sit here today, that we will have the 95% testing threshold that's required by ADE. That looks good across the board. And I want to thank the principals for their work going into this, the assistant principals, teachers, everybody involved in the planning of it, because it is a lot of moving pieces to make it happen. But also the parents for their flexibility. There were some schedule changes and virtual day, etc. And everybody got through that well, and really for the students for putting forth their best effort. I also want to update the board and the public on the teacher openings that we have posted for next year. I encourage everyone here, if you know someone who's looking for a teaching position, to send them our way. At McDowell Mountain, we have openings in special education, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and third grade. At the middle school, we have openings in math, social studies, and special education. And at high school, we have an opening in math, language arts, and counselor position. These positions are all posted on our website, Indeed, LinkedIn, Handshake, the AD website, and a site called EdJoin. Applications are starting to come in, and principals are prepared to interview qualified candidates very expeditiously. And the last thing I have tonight, there's proposed supplemental reading materials for grade 3 will be on display starting tomorrow for 60 days, consistent with board policy IJJ. These 4 books are available for viewing at the district office in the conference area, and in my opinion, they're quite delightful. The books are The Wild Robot Escapes, Lemonade War, and How to Eat Fried Worms. So if anyone has an interest in reviewing those pieces of literature, they will be available. And that concludes my comments tonight.
Thank you. Now moving on to governing board informational reports. We'll start with you, Mr. Starr. Anything to report?
Nope.
All right, Mrs. Reed?
Well, first I want to say, I'm pretty sure I read How to Eat Fried Worms when I was in elementary school, so it's good we're on the classics for 3rd grade. I attended the Falcon Athletics car wash, and the kids did a great job washing my car, so it's always great to see them out there, and they seem very enthusiastic about it. I attended the booster fundraiser. I did not win anything, so unlike the PTO gala where I
Yes.
won a lot, but I didn't win, but congratulations to Heather Donnelly, who did win the $5,000, and congratulations to the Booster Club for their efforts in fundraising for our athletes. They did an amazing job, and I'm sure did really well that night. And then yesterday I attended the Facilities Use Committee meeting, and we did our final tour of the high school. So we've toured all 3 schools now, and we'll be moving forward on looking at some numbers and kind of what's feasible for the different schools and whatnot. So the committee's doing a really great job.
Great, thank you. Mrs. Rakowski?
I read this audit from back to front, every page, and what I really learned about it was that we have to make sure when we're doing attendance that it is right on, you know.
I think we should wait till the audit is presented before we announce
Yeah,
anything.
that's fine.
Yeah. Anything else?
That's what I did.
Dr. Byron?
I helped wash cars at the car wash. The football team raised out $2,000 for them to go to camp. So appreciate all the community members who stopped by. And then also the Booster Club reverse raffle and the Spin It to Win It raffles. We had, again, community members that were more than willing to chip in money. Unfortunately, we have to do fundraising to make the money to do some things that we should be able to do, but the community does come out and support, so it was a really good time. Thank you.
Thank you. Myself, I continued to catch up on some more ASBA webinars, so caught up on 3 of those, and then was able to get out to the high school for coffee with the principal, which I haven't been able to do in quite some time. It was definitely enjoyable to be there and be able to hear from some parents, and there were 2 gentlemen who were there from the Boys and Girls Club. It's always nice when they're there and we see that they're reaching out and working with us to partner on programming for our students. Right, moving on, we have reports, and I think we're back to you, Dr. Sweeney.
Yes. Tyler, why don't you come up here and stand in front of the audience for a minute? I'll come join you shortly. But ladies and gentlemen, this is high school senior Tyler Ledley, and he has achieved the status of National Merit Finalist, and this is a really big deal. It essentially means that he has distinguished himself in the top 1% of high-achieving graduating students from across the country. short version of how this works, in the fall, approximately 1.5 million high school students enter into this program. And by September, about 16,000 are notified that they have qualified either as, 16,000 are notified that they are semifinalists. And then in February, that gets whittled down to 15,000 who are notified that they are finalists. Tyler has been with us since kindergarten, and he's come all the way through the system. He has taken 11 advanced placement courses in high school, and because of the test scores he's earned on those AP exams and a couple of dual enrollment courses he's taken, he's going to be entering Arizona State University's Barrett Honors College in August with approximately 44 college credits going in. That's a big deal. He's going to be majoring in mechanical engineering at ASU. And with him tonight, his mother is here, Kim, who is a special ed teacher here in the district, and his father, David, is here as well. And so on behalf of the entire district, I want to congratulate Tyler and his family. It is really a tremendous accomplishment, and it's nice to see when the good guys finish first. For you. Congratulations. Okay.
I don't think.
You make me look good.
I did. But Tyler better. Congratulations, Tyler.
Congratulations.
Our next report on the agenda is from Stugo. Come on up, Stugo representatives. Just one this evening. You can handle it though.
You put it.
You got it.
You got this. You're gonna take a picture of your mom.
Sadly, the other people on the committee couldn't be here tonight. Thank you. So I'm just here. I'm here to give an update on prom, which is on April 30th this year, and all the stuff about that. So in case anyone didn't know, it's going to be at the Legacy Ballrooms in Phoenix on April 30th. The theme is Cosmic Nights. It's going to be pretty cool. And it's coming up pretty fast, so Sugo's been busy planning that recently. We've been figuring out the food stuff. The venue is providing the food, so we just tell them kind of like what food we want to have at prom, and then they provide it. And then they provide half the drinks, and we provide the other drinks. So they have like a special bartender thing, but obviously non-alcoholic. So yeah, we have that, and then the high school ourselves, we're going to be providing the sodas and stuff like that. But one of the drinks that they provide is actually going to be some theme drink oriented around Cosmic Nights. So that's going to be really cool to see what the end product of that looks like. And there's going to be a photo booth, and that's pretty much what we've been working on recently. It's been pretty busy. Any questions?
Have you sold a lot of tickets?
I think we sold a decent amount. Well, a lot of people wait till last minute, so we're expecting to get like a lot more in the next coming weeks. But yeah, we've sold a decent amount so far.
Good, great. Any other questions?
I just think this sounds like a really good thing that you're putting together.
Thank you. It's sad that the other Sugo members couldn't be here tonight, but I'm sure they would have been glad to be here.
Well, we'd love to hear from you.
Yes, thank you very
Good to
much.
hear from you guys too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good
Thank
evening.
you.
Next, we have Henry and Horn, an audit presentation. Do you have any introduction for us, Dr. Sweeney?
Yes, Madam President, members of the governing board, and guests, as you are aware, each year the district undergoes an audit which covers a wide range of topics which include financial reporting, record keeping, and some operational aspects. And for the last several years, we've contracted with Henry and Horn, a company that's provided auditing services in Arizona since 1957. And tonight we have with us Brian Hemmerly, and Brian is a certified public accountant and certified fraud examiner for Henry and Horn. And he's going to share a summary of the audit for the year that ended June 30th, 2021. So Welcome, Brian.
Thank you.
Floor is
Good
yours.
evening, Madam President, members of the board. My name is Brian Hemmerly. I'm the lead audit partner for the district's external audit. This is required by state statute, the Auditor General's Office, and the Arizona Department of Education. I have a brief presentation for you on the financial audit for the year. This first slide here discusses what's called an unmodified opinion, what we consider a clean opinion. The district did receive a clean opinion on their financial statements this year. There were no findings related to the financial statements themselves that need to be reported as a significant deficiency or a material weakness this year. We did have some findings regarding state requirements for schools that we'll go over in just a moment. But as far as the financial statements are concerned, there were no findings in that area. Our responsibility was discussed in our engagement letter with you on May 10, 2021. We provide reasonable assurance that the financial statements are materially correct. We do not provide absolute assurance. The difference is that absolute assurance would require us to test every transaction that the district has. Reasonable assurance requires that we use statistically valid sampling, internal control test work, we review your operations, and we do broad questionnaires and walk through the processes of the district. Significant accounting policies this year are discussed in note 1 of your financial statements. We had no difficulties encountered during the audit. We had no uncorrected misstatements and no disagreements with management. And we're not aware of any outside independent accountants related to the audit. GASB 84, the Government Accounting Standards Board, requires that all governmental entities, including school districts, start complying with Statement 84, which is related to fiduciary funds. In the past, your student activity funds were considered fiduciary in nature by government accounting standards. Going forward, the Government Accounting Standards Board does not consider your student activity funds to be fiduciary. So they will be rolled up into the governmental funds as special revenue funds. This change is for this year and going forward, and that was noted in the audit report for the year. This is all very accounting-based information. There really is nothing to be concerned about here. It didn't have any prior period adjustment effect. It's just allow the readers to know that there was a change in the way you're reporting those funds going forward. Okay, the Uniform System of Financial Records. This is the compliance questionnaire that the Auditor General's Office of the State of Arizona, the Arizona Department of Education requires that we do compliance test work over. It has a number of areas that we have to look at. I have a few slides here on the findings for each one of the areas that we had to test. The first area is cash and revenue. There were a number of questions that received a no answer for cash and revenue, mostly related to student activity, auxiliary operations, and extracurricular tax credit fund monies. Those findings were all essentially related to the same issue, the issue being that when we pulled transactions, 10 of 25 transactions tested, 25 is required by the state, there was no supporting documentation that we could actually trace back to the general ledger for those 10 transactions. Property control, this is your capital assets. So buildings, equipment, automobiles, things of that nature. There were 2 items on the premises of the school district that did not match the location listed in the stewardship listing for the general ledger. You had capital asset inventory that had not been reconciled to your stewardship or general fixed asset listing in the last year. The federal government requires that you inventory all fixed assets every 2 years. The state requires it every 3 years. You receive enough federal funding from the federal government that you'll have to have your inventory done every 2 years. That inventory was not properly reconciled in the past year. This was also a management letter comment that we provided. It did not rise to the level of what we considered a significant deficiency or material weakness, but we did find that to be a management letter comment. Expenditures. For 10 items tested, we noted that, again, for student activities and extracurricular tax credit money, there was no, 4 of the 20 items tested received a no response, because again, there was no supporting documentation for those specific disbursements. The state takes student activity very seriously because it is student money that is collected through things like the car wash. And so the state wants to see that the school district is being a good fiduciary of those monies. Credit cards and P cards, the district did incur a $39 late fee, $76 in interest, which is trivial to our audit, but the state wants to know whether or not you were late paying your credit cards, and you were late one time for $39, and it cost $76 in interest. Procurement. For 8 out of 10 items purchased this year, there were no written quotes maintained. Now, that's not to say they didn't receive written quotes, they just weren't maintained, so we couldn't test them. That's for 8 out of 10 items. State required 10 to be tested. For all your cooperative agreements tested, 10 out of 10, there was no documentation for 3 things that are required by the state. The first is documentation of due diligence, making sure that it truly was the lowest price the district could obtain for those purchases. You were not listed as part of the cooperative agreement with the cooperative entity, and there was no written determination as to whether or not you evaluated whether there were lower prices available for those 10 cooperative purchases. For payroll, this is a minor finding, but it is required for us to report it. For 1 out of 5 employees, we have to look at all their personnel files to make sure they have the required documentation. Usually it's things like W-4s, I-9s, things that are required by the federal government. The state has a specific thing they want. They want to see that teachers are signing a loyalty oath to the Constitution of the United States of America. 1 out of 5 employees tested, the loyalty oath was not on file. That's relatively minor. Everything else in payroll looked pretty good. Financial reporting, question number 6. The district did not include the 8th Arizona Auditor General's district spending report. It's required to be on your website annually. For student attendance, there were 3 findings. 3 out of 15 students tested. There was an over-reported absence of 1 average daily membership. That's actually in favor of the state. It's not in favor of the district in that situation. 2 out of 10 students tested. The date of entry was not within 5 days of the actual enrollment. For 7 out of 10 students tested, there was no entry date at all on the enrollment form, so we were unable to test it. District membership information did not agree with what we reported in ADE. That's us taking your software at the district, looking at the attendance and that information, and then going to see what the state has on their files, and it showed that there were discrepancies between the number of days of attendance and absences between the 2 systems. Information technology. This has become very, very important to the state of Arizona and to every government. There's been a lot of ransomware cases for governmental entities. Schools are no exception. Currently, we are not aware of any disaster recovery or contingency plan on file for the IT systems at the district. This is really something that you'd like to broadcast, but we would encourage you, the state is going to encourage you to create a disaster recovery and contingency plan for your IT systems. So that is all the USFR findings. My next slide here is about single audit. So the single audit is what the federal government requires when they give you money. This year, you spent over $1.3 million in federal money. You're required to get a special audit if you spend over $750,000 in federal funding. You did. The major program that was required to be tested this year was the COVID-19 Coronavirus Relief Fund Enrollment Stabilization Grant. The good news here is that the school district did comply with all federal requirements of that grant, and you received a clean opinion on your federal funding. Our other observations and recommendations, we have the 3 items here. The first one, this is not, again, a material weakness or significant deficiency. The district was not able to reconcile revenues collected between the student activities, auxiliary operation, external systems, the rest and track, the bank statement, and the Vision software. Visions is the actual GL software that's used with the state or the county treasurer's office. Our understanding is that finance is in the process of correcting this issue, reducing the number of softwares that are used to be just Visions and banks and the bank statement. The problem with the Vision software, and you really can't stop using it, the county's going to require that, but the problem is it doesn't allow you to break down information by club for student activities. And so that's why it's historically been that you've needed 3 different reconciling items. It's never usually a good idea in a county to have multiple sets of books for one area, but in this situation, you're kind of forced into it in order to have a good reconciliation of each club, each school. So that is, my understanding is being remedied currently. The capital asset inventory, we talked about that briefly. The last item here is it came to our attention during the audit that there was a property the school district had on the county tax rolls that is being leased out to the Boys and Girls Club for a trivial amount, I think it's something like $1 a year or something like that. We wanted to make sure we got that information into the notes if it was material. Unfortunately, we were unable to find any records of the district on that agreement between Boys and Girls Clubs and the district. We had to obtain that information from the Boys and Girls Clubs themselves. Because of that, we are issuing a recommendation that you maintain records for all leases between the school district, even if it's just for $1, just so that someone can come back and make sure they know what property the district owns. Last year, you had a significant deficiency. It had been corrected this year. This is related to a middle school auxiliary operating bank account that was not being reconciled correctly last year. This year, it was being reconciled correctly, so that's a bit of good news. And that is my presentation. Are there any questions?
I have lots of questions, but probably not for you.
Right. You
No.
can start, Mrs. Reed, if you have.
Thanks. I'll address Ms. King and Dr. Sweeney. Dr. Sweeney, I know this is not really in your doing because you've only been here for a couple months, but obviously the procurement is a huge issue, and it's something that I've actually addressed in the past couple months on my own with Ms. King, and Dr. Sweeney is aware of that. So I guess at this point, I'm really disappointed. I'll just say that. I'm disappointed in our audit because when Dr. Allen was here, our audit was pristine. And so he did a lot of work, and I'm disappointed that we're back in this point. And I'm not going to, it is what it is right now. My question is, what are we doing to rectify these things? And Ms. King, maybe you can answer, Dr. Sweeney will answer, especially regarding the procurement, because that is a huge issue when it comes to finances.
Yes, good question and good concerns, and Catherine and I have had multiple conversations, and excuse me, it is a building awareness and accountability across the system that if you're going to make a purchase, you need to follow the proper procedures to do so. And we've been hitting that message pretty hard, and we know what those procedures are. We've shared with others what those procedures are, so it's time that everyone follow those procedures.
Yes, and that's not just a district policy, that's an Arizona statute. So
Correct, that is the law.
that's correct. So is there training that needs to be done, professional development? Is it just you training somebody? Like, what are we doing to make sure that this moves forward?
Yeah, there will be a need to do a more widespread training. Most of this has been limited to people who make sizable purchases and authorize those purchases. So we will determine how broad that training needs to be.
Thank you.
Anything else, Mrs. Reed?
No, I'll let someone else go ahead for now.
I did want to ask about the information technology disaster recovery or contingency plan, because I thought I realized that this audit took place a little while ago and we're getting the findings now, but I thought that there was an item associated with either a grant or a state requirement that necessitated that we complete some kind of ITDR plan in either February or March of this year.
I am not aware of the requirement to
Okay.
complete a DR plan. I know that there are some resources available to assist districts in getting that going, and Dennis Wright and I have had some conversations. We're meeting Friday morning.
Okay. All right, and then I also know in regards to the student attendance reporting that we had a discussion, was it January, February, that we had a discussion about known issues and concerns with the way we were taking attendance and recording it in PLP, and that there have been efforts made to get in better alignment. And we also had the discussion about our registrars and consolidating to one location so that we have more consistency with the enrollment, so we don't have different people at different sites kind of operating under slightly different processes. We have like two people side by side who are in lockstep and doing the same thing all the time. And I think that those conversations that we've had and those types of changes will help to rectify the discrepancies that we've had this year and hopefully not see them reappear next year.
Brief comment on that. I think there was a gap several different points through the last 12 to 18 months on having a district data specialist who really manages the PowerSchool platform and is responsible for the state reporting. And since Angie Brooks has come in mid-February, late February, she has taken over that role and really done an outstanding job at it. So I would expect no problems to be gone.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I think to Jill's point, I want to know how things will be remedied so that we're not in this situation again. Just to clarify, this is for fiscal year 2021. So everything that would have ended as of June 30th, 2021. Nothing that's, sometimes that message gets lost. So these are things that happened last year. We won't know everything that's been put in place to rectify some of these until we get the audit for 2022. Sort of rhetorical. Just wanted to make
Just
sure
transparent.
that, that was stated for the record.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Sir.
And on that note, and I follow up with what Jill said, but are we working with this year and kind of getting ahead of the game when it comes to these issues? So that the audit that is done next August or September, whenever it happens, will reflect the fact that we've had more of these issues and maybe none of those issues.
I think we're working pretty well to eliminate those issues. I know Catherine and I spent a lot of time talking about procurement processes, and admittedly, we both beat our heads against the wall from time to time, but it's an ongoing process. The disaster recovery issue is new to me, so I'm not sure what has been done in that regard or not, but we'll certainly get moving on that. But, you know, the issue too with the student activities and tax credit, which we've talked about before, there's now a system in place for how that is being accounted and tracked, and I think it's the effective, correct way to do it. Sometimes, you know, the tendency is to take the easy way to do it as opposed to the right way to do it. I think it's being done correctly and being managed very well. So I think it'll look different when next year's audit is done.
The documentation issue has been changing, obviously, in the last few decades when we've gone to somewhat paperless documentation. But that's where our plans for not disaster recovery, we want to prevent disasters from happening. But do we have a third-party system that tracks documents for us so that the auditors have access to that online?
What sort of documents are you referring to?
All of them, actually. Payroll to capital. I mean, I know that because there have been other discussions about this, and eventually that's how things are. You know, filing cabinets are not sold much anymore. But it is important that document storage still have a filing structure to it so that documents can be found when they're needed. I go back to when we signed the agreement with the Boys and Girls Club here. There was an agreement. I signed it, so. But I can understand after about 20 years or so that there's nobody here anymore that knows where they put it. But it was at one time. So my point is, that's one of the reasons why document storage has gone paperless, basically PDFs and everything else that's involved. And there are third-party systems out there that act as filing systems that do the backup and do the disaster recovery planning for our documentation. I'm just wondering if we're.
I can't speak from an informed position on that today. I can look into it and find out.
And finally, I think, you know, our staff is what it is. I mean, we're short-staffed in most situations, so I encourage you to go outside if you have to and get some support, maybe from our previous staff people that can help bring us in line.
Did you have anything additional?
I do. And you kind of answered it, Dr. Sweeney. We talked a lot about the tax credits, and the tax credits kind of there were some things that weren't being handled exactly the way they should have been. So that has been corrected now, correct?
Yeah, I mean, the recording of the tax credits, coming in is accurate, and there, where we run into things, and, we just had a recent one where someone made a tax credit donation 3 years ago, they weren't sure what the check number was, they weren't sure where it went to, and the expectation is we're going to produce proof of their tax credit while they wait in the lobby, and that just isn't going to happen. But as, in terms of the dollars coming in and going to the right place, yes, that is happening.
Okay, and then the 2 items that you found in your audit that weren't cataloged properly, that they weren't on site, like, are we notified what 2 items those are, or because it's just a random thing, we should just really do an inventory control?
Madam President, members of the board, yes, we did let them know which 2 items we found in the inventory that didn't meet. Really, we're just taking items from the list, going out to your sites, trying to find them. We just do a sample.
Sure.
And then we take things on the site and we try and find them on your list. Again, a sample, albeit it's not a very large sample, so I think the bigger problem is just having that inventory done every 2 years at a minimum.
Sure.
To make sure the sites are properly noted and things that are disposed are actually coming off the list, things of that nature.
People move things in my house all the time too. So.
I know. I'm like, 2 items. Honestly, I'm like, that's
No,
great.
I mean, I joke, but it's not a joke. But yeah, no.
It's challenging for a lot of districts to inventory because things get moved around between sites all the time, so.
Absolutely.
It's hard to keep track of that.
Well, and we have a store, like basically a school that we're using as storage, so,
Yeah.
things get moved, and so I get it. But yes, so that's obviously something that the district will look to implement, so.
Yes.
Yeah, I just, and the credit card thing just,
Yeah.
that kind of chaps me.
Yes.
But it is what it is, so, I would just like to see better in the future, that this is not an acceptable audit for our district. Part of the governing board's responsibility is to be cognizant of our funding, and we need to make sure that our leadership is following that. And, it's just disappointing that this is where we were, knowing how clean our audits were the past couple of years.
Thank you for your presentation.
Absolutely, thank you.
Additional reports that are included in our board packet are site council minutes on pages 49 through 61, student activity and auxiliary accounts on pages 62 through 69. The unaudited financial report is on pages 70 and 71. And then current enrollment and withdrawal is listed on page 72, but I know we got an updated, revised version from Krista via email in a spreadsheet. Are there any questions or comments on any of these reports that we received in our board packet? Okay, we'll move on to public comment. Mrs. Rutkowski, will you please read our public comment statement?
I will. Okay, call to the public.
Just a second. Just
Okay.
in case, Tyler, if you want to go home with your parents, you're welcome to stay at the meeting if you're having a great time, but if you need to get home and do any homework, don't feel you have to stay. The same for anybody else. All right, now we'll move on to public comment.
Okay. Okay. Call to the public. This is the time for the public to comment. Time limits may be allocated on public comment at the discretion of the board president for the board to efficiently complete its business. The board reserves the right to prohibit any comment made in a discourteous or threatening manner. Complaints about specific individuals, students, or personnel are discouraged. Personnel issue should be directed to the appropriate staff member or administrator per district policy. Members of the board may not discuss items that are not specifically identified on the agenda. Therefore, pursuant to ARS 38-431.01, capital H, action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter, responding to any criticism or scheduling the matter for further consideration and decision at a later date.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Our first public comment, our first speaker, I should say, is Ed. Will you come on up?
The last name?
I can't read it. Stiza, probably, yes. We will have 3 minutes per speaker this evening. I will start the timer when you get started, and I will give you a warning at 30 seconds. I will interrupt and say 30 seconds. I apologize in advance if that appears rude. Welcome.
Welcome, thank you. So, good evening, Madam President, board, and residents and students of Fountain Hills. So, I'm sure everybody here, I'm usually at town council meetings. I didn't get a chance to speak at the last meeting. I'll try to make this as clear as possible. So, I was going to get up tonight and speak about the school properties that are being considered for sale, but something immediately came to my attention as I was going between job sites in Fountain Hills today, and that was the disturbing install of the 5G towers over at the ball field, as far as football field. So that's, I'm not sure everybody, I don't know who's responsible in this room, but certainly if there is some criticism, it certainly stands right there. So if any one of you want to be criticized for that, I don't know if that's the appropriate way to say it, but somebody's got to come up with some sort of explanation of the public. I'm around in Fountain Hills every day. I knew nothing of this install. What has been brought to my attention, and will be brought up at the next town council meeting, is that most of these towers that are going to be installed are going to be throughout town. We could have as many as 1,000 of these towers if all these companies get their way. So not only has somebody put, with this decision-making, has put students in jeopardy and faculty and certainly the rest of the public, and somebody needs to take ownership of that. And so if somebody can certainly explain who made that decision, I certainly would love to know, and I'm sure the public would love to know. So it's certainly a big problem. Leaches have entered into Fountain Hills since over the past 2 years, and specifically over the past 6 months. And leaches are after your property, and leaches just installed those towers. So if we want to continue as residents to put Fountain Hills in jeopardy, that's a huge problem. We're going to lose what we're here for. And my parents moved here 30 years ago, and
30 seconds.
Fountain Hills, thank you. Fountain Hills has changed enormously over the past 2 years, and we are going to lose this town if we don't get up and speak. And we are in serious trouble, and I don't think everybody knows that. So with the school board properties, or the school properties, those are last open spaces. We all want to help you find a way to get the money that you need. And that money's not even going to matter with the 5G. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a great
Can I ask a clarifying question? Can you tell us the location of the 5G tower you're talking about?
Oh my gosh, yeah, they're
You didn't-
actually have pictures. They're on both sides of the visitor side bleachers,
In
right on the ball field.
our high school?
Yeah, the high school,
Okay.
yes.
And did you have access to our campus today, or you saw those from Google people?
Well, I was actually driving by to go to one of my job sites, and I seen a crane over there, and I couldn't believe it. We are in, the town is going to be educated very quickly on what's going on next week at the town council meeting.
Okay, no,
Thank you.
thank you.
Oh, okay.
Can I just ask, are they actually on the inside of our property or on Golden Eagle property? Because we don't own the park.
Yeah.
No, they're on both sides. They're attached to the lights for the field.
Is it the
So-
AT&T stuff over there?
It's up
All
here.
right,
All right,
thank you.
thank you.
Very good.
Our next speaker is Cheryl Stiles. Good evening, welcome back.
Good evening, that's really short. Okay. Thank you, Board, for allowing me the opportunity to speak here this evening. As you know, I'm Cheryl Stiles from the last meeting, and I came to speak to you again also about the property sales, as Ed mentioned. And I just thought I'd ask the folks behind me, how many of you here are here representing and encouraging the El Lago and Tavern property areas? Okay. We have quite a few number of concerned citizens, and this is one of the reasons why I'm coming back like Ed. My family visited here in the 1970s, and my family purchased in 86, so we are an original property owner on the El Lago Street. And this lovely art picture, which I'm sure you've all seen in the Fountain Hills Times, whoops, that's an arroyo. That's actually what it looks like out the back of my house on the patio. And I know when neighbors come by or all the dog walkers are together, we always go to the back of the patio somewhere so we can be over that arroyo. That arroyo is what gives us our dark skies because it's not filled. Can you imagine this picture with the current talk from January 2022 meeting? 155 houses now here. You're bulldozing that. You're bulldozing also the home of precious animals that are in there. And what I mean by that is, yes, we all have desert animals and vegetation. However, in that area, we actually have great horned owls nesting in the protected saguaros. We have coyote dens. I know that because I get woken up at 2 a.m. in the morning by usually a pack going on. That high density housing, even if you put the 155, which is twice the density that my father, who stood before you here in 1986 and 1990, and we tabled the sale of the property, that was only 85 houses. Now you're putting in double that density. There's not even green space allowed for those animals or anything to exist. One of the other things that I also want to bring to attention is I think about why my parents came here, as I said. My dad actually was an aeronautical engineer in the space program, so astronomy was a big thing for our family. He came here for open spaces. We bought here because we didn't want Scottsdale. We didn't want that light infiltration. One last statement is on the uses of finances. ARS 151102 speaks to this very clearly. It says that when we sell a school property, it may not go to maintenance or operations, and if we have outstanding bond debt greater than 14%, 38% of those proceeds must go to bond payoff before you can even use it for capital purposes. One of the recommendations we have, we went and looked at the Aspen property, it's flat. It's not like this, like El Lago is. It's flat, it's up against a berm, it protects lightning. Zone it to the proper zoning that is in the Aspen neighborhood to make it equal. Thank you. Thank you.
Now we have Tina Levita. Good evening, welcome back.
Good evening, thank you. I'm here to talk about the Plat 602A as well, like the other neighbors. And just a few concerns before you make a final decision on wanting to put it on the ballot for sale on that property is just to talk a little bit more on the habitat that lives in there. I'm not sure if you guys are aware that AR Title 17, all owls are protected by Arizona state law and the federal law under the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. And there's fines and penalties may result in removing and disturbing the activity of those that are living in that area. And there are quite a few. And there we've got photographs and everything that she was saying, even of the living in the saguaros that are protected. Also, when I purchased my property, the value of my property was based on the mountain views that were in the appraisal of my property. Are you all prepared to compensate homeowners for the loss of their value of their property when you're going to plan on building 88 to 100 and whatever? I know that it said 144 on one of your slides, but really only 88. are you planning on compensating homeowners that no longer have that view and have got a house backed up to their backyard? And that's just something to think about as you're making decisions moving on. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Donna Zimmerly. Good evening.
I am one of the homeowners whose house is on Cavern Drive, and it borders the arroyo that everyone's concerned that as a school site, you may put on the November ballot to sell. We'd like to stress that it's your choice, your opportunity to help us save that land, the beautiful land that we have as part of residents in Fountain Hills. We would like you to explore alternative funding sources. Are there other assets that you can sell? Can we help you pass a bond measure? Can you reduce budgets? Can you consolidate? Whatever you do, please don't sell the school site land. Our efforts with all the people here and the people's houses that border that land is to keep the sale of the land off the November ballot. You can save the wild land, and we hope you choose to. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the next one is Claire Schmidt. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, for allowing me to speak today. I am also here to speak my concerns about the potential sale of the Arroyo 602A plot. I also live on Cavern Drive, and we purchased the home knowing that nothing would be developed there, or at least with the idea that nothing would be developed in that area. That is one of the reasons we chose Fountain Hills over the other areas in the valley, is because of the open spaces and because we're not on top of each other with homes. We have these arroyos and spaces for wildlife. And I would like to continue to support the district in any way possible, but not at the sacrifice of the open space and land that we have today. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have Ryan Berry. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. I'm not really good with public speaking, so if I get
We
nervous-
won't bite.
Okay. By the way, congratulations. You are amazing. That was my wife that just spoke, so I'm just going to kind of follow that up a little bit. We moved here from Maryland, Harford County, Maryland, which is a little suburb outside of Baltimore. And one of the reasons why we decided to move here was because they started developing in pretty much like every last nook and cranny in the county, and space was getting scarce and it was becoming very, very crowded. And when we moved here, we were looking around at places to live, and one of the major deciding factor, like you said, was we have some elbow room, we had some breathing room here, and it's beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous. This was where we wanted to plant our roots and let our dreams become reality. So if you could please consider other means of getting the funding that you guys need. Like she said, we will support you in everything that you need. I also wanted to make mention of something that cities do. They call them urban forests or green spaces, and it's basically a way to preserve biodiversity in kind of closed-in areas. And I think that would be like, if that piece of land could be partitioned as almost like a mini green space or urban forest, as they call it, that would be a great alternative for learning purposes. I mean, people could go there to learn about biodiversity, hydrology, water runoff. I mean, I used to apply for jobs at ADEC all the time, And the main job that we used to always see come up, and it's something that is really desired by the state, is soil conservationists. I don't know if there's, like, we just moved here not too long ago, I don't know if there's a STEM program with the school district or not, but I mean, these would be great sites for people to branch out and learn. Yeah, so, consideration. Thank you for letting me talk.
Thank you. Joshua Greenfield. Hi, welcome.
Hello, thank you. I'm speaking about the Arroyo as well. Congratulations, Tyler. Like Ryan was mentioning, I kind of had more ideas and was kind of wondering alternative possibilities. One of the things that I was thinking was, I actually graduated from Hills High School in 2003, and I've been in Los Angeles for the past like 15, 18 years or so, and I'm back now. And some of the places that I worked at, the Walgreens out front near the Target, it was being opened when I graduated, and I was one of the first employees there, and it's been basically vacant since. There's also that A&W that was there, the Blockbuster, I believe, was there. There's some other buildings. I was wondering about like potentials of, rather than turning the land into houses or something, doing what Ryan was suggesting, or having some kind of nature area, but also those the land out front, if the school were to purchase those restaurants, those buildings, and rather than having educational classrooms where you're learning economics in like your traditional box classroom, maybe you're learning like you have a restaurant and the students are getting to start up like how to run a restaurant, like what it means, like the different aspects of like running it, can it be maintained, and then it could be like a school project that could maybe be multi-platforming, like you could have the art department, you need signs, different things like that kind of stuff. And so it could maybe kind of bring the school together as like a unified thing. And if it actually became a legit business, it could be a source of income for the school that just continues. And I don't know, it'd be kind of cool. I keep hearing that the class size is going down here for Fountain Hills. And so maybe it would be like kind of like a thing that would incentivize people from Scottsdale or other areas to come over here to be like, I don't know, we didn't have shop or anything in the school when I went to school here, and that was the thing that I really wish we had, welding or some of those types of classes where it's like outside of just the traditional science, mathematics, and those things. And but yeah, I'm an idea factory. I'm an artist, so if you need ideas, please hit me up, and I would be happy to give my assistance. And that's what I do for studios in Hollywood, and I've been doing it for directors all over the world. And so please, I would be willing to help in any way other than see more houses put in there. I think that's the worst idea that I've heard before, the thing.
Thank you. Vincent? And I'm not even gonna try the last name, sorry.
Simple, Brennan.
There's a lot of letters there for Brennan.
B-R-E-N-N-A-N. And it's a junior on the end.
Oh, that kind of smushed together. Okay, got it. That's all right. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam President, esteemed people of the board. Tyler, great job. Tyler's parents, even a better job. The youth of America, this is our future. Good to see stuff like that. Anyway, I'm here to address also 602 Alpha, or A, excuse me. I've been going through the minutes of the school board meetings, and I found in the February work study session, in section 6 Bravo, there are 12 talking points that I guess the council or the workshop put together. And I was concerned about some of them. I went to the county legislature to find out about what we can do about with the ARS 151102. I'm not in favor of selling the property, as you'll find out. One day I had a knock on the door and somebody came over to me and said, could you help us out with this? I've been in Fountain Hills since, I've been a homeowner since 2003, and I moved up to El Lago in 14. And it's just a beautiful place. So I'm very happy to be here. Anyway, what we did was, a bunch of us got together, and now the bunch is over 76 families and growing, and they're concerned. So I've looked into a couple of things to try to stop the sale. So I'm a little bit, I would be treated as hostile, I would guess. I'm really not hostile. My hostility days are long gone. One of the things that I did, I'm hooked up with the Army Corps of Engineers. We have at the bottom of cabin, I found out that we have a flood plan. And with 140 or 80 or 110 homes in the area of 602, we would have a problem. I'm also making contact with the sanitary district. They're all stressed right now and have to expand. They have nowhere to go. With another 146 homes, we have an issue. So, and the environmental impact study and the state conservation. So I've been working on that, and we'll help you with the DAA for alternate funding. So if you need help, we're getting organized, and it's going to be more than 76 families. So I just wanted to explain that.
Thank you. All right, that was our last public comment. Get the agenda back open. Now we move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda includes donations on pages 74 through 78, accounts payable vouchers pages 79 through 91, payroll vouchers 92 through 96, and the personnel action report, which is on page 97. Are there any comments or questions about the consent agenda?
No.
Okay.
No.
Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. On to action items, the first of which is the 2022-23 board meeting dates. That's in our packet on pages 98 and 99. Any questions or comments about the board meeting dates?
I like that it got moved to 6 o'clock. 6:30 is kind of late. So anybody who pays attention, note that next year our meetings will be at 6 o'clock, not 6:30.
For the business meetings.
For the business meetings. That's my only comment.
Any other questions or comments?
No.
All right, I will go ahead and move that we approve the board meeting dates as presented for 2022-2023.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Our next action item, District Athletic Handbook. Dr. Sweeney, do you have an introduction for us?
Yes, Madam President, members of the governing board, and guests. This item for your consideration and approval is the updated athletic handbook for the 22-23 school year. You've had a copy of it for a few days and had a chance to review it. We do have Athletic Director Evelyn Wynn in the audience this evening, and she is available to speak to any questions you may have. I do recommend approval, and Evelyn, I thank you for the work that you put into that.
I have a couple questions. First of all, thank you. I think our handbook was starting to get very outdated, so I appreciate this. I really appreciate the very clear guidelines for parents and coaches as well as athletes. I know that we still need to insert board policy here in terms of eligibility, and I appreciate you allowing us to continue to work on that. You know, we've had this discussion many times about how extracurriculars helps provide a safe space for a lot of our kids who might not otherwise have it. So while I understand that we should have zero tolerance for many offenses, I am a little concerned that there's the potential that some of our children will not be able to play sports for an entire year because of an infraction. And, you know, things happen. I'm not saying that, and I don't know if this is you or if this goes to the principals or the superintendent, but, you know, I just worry that someone is in the wrong place at the wrong time and all of a sudden they are removed from a sports team when in fact that might be a kid who needs more than ever to be part of a group to keep them safe. So I'm just curious. I don't think that it probably falls on you so much. Is this part of PBIS? I don't know if Mr. Hartman, Dr. Sweeney.
Are you referring to the drugs, alcohol, and discipline?
I am,
part?
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So that was actually pulled from policy JJJ, which is
So it's
a
my
policy.
fault.
Yeah, it's actually but I pulled that from that policy because I'm trying to, as you all know, we put a committee together and we're presenting new policy and changes to that. So that was part of JJJ. Because I was trying to keep that more academic based, I moved this drugs and alcohol policy into our athletic handbook. So it's copied and pasted directly. I'm
No, you're correct.
Okay, I mean, I'm welcome to change it.
It's board policy. It's not your policy, it's not the superintendent policy, it's board policy. So, it didn't fall under the ineligibility, it's a whole separate, it was a whole
So that's-
separate part.
I think that's where I'm confusing. I mean,
So-
obviously there needs to be consequences for some serious offenses.
Wendy and I have issues with, so to give you a little background because you weren't here. So we used to have an ineligibility that basically stated, you know, you had to maintain a certain GPA and whatnot. And then it was brought to the board that they would like it to be a little stronger. But Wendy and I opposed it for many reasons. And mostly because not all teachers grade the same way. They don't all grade at, right away at the same time. So if all of a sudden now Friday afternoon, a teacher hasn't graded assignments, it could make a kid ineligible. So we were assured by Dr. J at the time that, the athletic director, Dr. J, whoever had the time, it was in charge, that would look at that and say, you know what, we get why this kid's ineligible, they're not really ineligible. So we wanted it to be like kind of on a case-by-case basis, not a blanket statement. But we went ahead and approved it. Kind of worked, but kind of didn't. So that's where Wendy and I have sticking points when it comes to ineligibility because, while I don't disagree with the policy, regarding drugs, alcohol, and whatnot, it's hard when they're ineligible based on grades. So that was my sticking point the whole time, is that I didn't want a kid who was trying and had turned things in, but just wasn't, the teacher hadn't caught up with that to be ineligible.
And at the next board meeting, when the eligibility revisions are presented to you, that is addressed.
Thank you.
Good. Yeah, I mean, it's carrot and the stick. Like, it's so easy to get a kid who really wants to play, to get them focused and get assignments done. So to cut them out, it seems like, it seems like it may not serve the purpose that we want it to serve. And I apologize for bringing yes, I know that this is our school, but seeing it in the athletic handbook, I don't know. And again, yes, absolutely. A kid is caught,
And it does, you're right. Like some of them end up in the wrong place at the right time. You're guilty by association. This specifically says that any athlete who's in possession of drugs, alcohol, paraphernalia, or lookalikes. So, it's not you were in the wrong place at the right time. Like, it's actually on your person.
I know, and it's a very naughty thing to do. But, it breaks my heart because you have a kid who, for whatever reason, is taking very risky behaviors that they shouldn't be in school. For the love of God, they're only in school a very short amount of time. And then to take them away from something that could be
A positive
an
intervention
asset
for
and
them,
something,
yes.
it really is.
But if you don't have that, then it comes at the coach's discretion.
No, yeah,
So,
and that's why
and that's not fair either.
instituted this, because it was at the coach's discretion
Right.
and it wasn't being used fairly. Yes,
Exactly,
I
because
know.
one coach may be
Yes.
more lenient than another, and
Yes.
it has to be policy.
Yes, yes.
I do want to mention, as I'm looking at this, apparently I must have been very excited about golf because I listed it twice. So assuming this is approved, I will revise that and make sure.
I noticed that too, but I wasn't gonna mention it because that was just,
You can only join golf once, sorry.
we got a lot of golf going on.
They might need more players, now they can join twice.
No, but I appreciate this. I think it's really well done, very clear, very easy for everyone to read and make sense of. Headings and subheadings and bullet points. It's very nice.
And covers a lot of information and
Yes.
not a lot of pages, which
Yes.
is always good. People have very short attention spans these days. Yes,
Exactly.
Mr. Sar?
Yeah, I just want to echo the fact that it's about time somebody did this, so thank you very much. It's, I go back to a long time ago, but it's been that long since we've done this. So, thank you very much for bringing us up to date. I know there's always gonna be issues, as have been mentioned. I'm big in athletics, but, I know it's not a one-time deal. We're gonna have to remodel our policies on a pretty regular basis, and that way, as long as we did to do it this time, so.
Yeah, it's definitely a living document.
Yeah.
Expect me here next year.
We would love to see.
Yeah.
But bring your golf clubs.
Any other questions or comments? All right, do we have a motion?
I move that we approve the athletic handbook as presented.
I second it.
We have the motion and the second to approve the updated athletic handbook. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? There are no nay votes, so the motion is passed. And our next action item, the 2023 student trip to Italy. Dr. Sweetie, do you have an intro for us?
Yes, Madam President, members of the governing board and guests, teachers Luke Saltzman and Chris Peterson are requesting permission to take a combined group of middle school and high school students on a 10-night trip to Italy through EF Tours at the end of the next school year, May 29, 2023 till June 8, 2023. A copy of the itinerary is attached in your board packet, and Mr. Saltzman is here this evening. And if you have any questions, I will defer them to Mr. Saltzman.
Can I ask a logistics question? Why is this as an action item and not as a discussion item first?
I'm not aware that we have had a practice of two
We don't?
readings on
Or
action
not for
items.
this, just for policies? Okay.
Yeah, we don't have to have two
Okay.
readings. We often have.
We often have
These
those.
usually do
Yeah,
discussion
that's
and
just-
discussion.
Yeah, because
Now that you mentioned that, but
but
it's not required.
Okay.
I will say that I like to see that it's, the dates of the trip are after school is out, so that we're not, trying to shoehorn it in the spring around testing schedules and other stuff like that, so.
Yeah, that's why I picked those dates. It makes it a lot easier.
Because we keep giving you a hard time.
Yes.
Let's be honest.
Yes.
So again, is this a school-sponsored trip because of the tax credits?
I would like it to be yes. Yeah, it would,
That
it
is
would help a
Florence,
lot.
Rome, Italy. Tours.
I am 7th and 8th graders going to Italy with chaperones. I think that's too young. I think that going to DC is one thing, and you guys are amazing chaperones, and apparently the DC trip is one of the most incredible things ever. 13 and 14-year-olds in a foreign country, I don't care how amazing you guys are as chaperones, I just feel like that is a huge liability for our district. To go overseas, to be on a, 14, 15-hour plane, I
Do you get a lot of middle schoolers that go on these?
No, we don't.
Right.
This year, I think there's 2 or 3 going.
Are their parents going?
Is their parents or are their parents?
Are those students' parents?
No.
Because like I
They
agree with
can
Wendy.
go.
I know they can go. I agree with Wendy. Like, as a parent, I would never send my 7th or 8th grader with anybody. I've known you most of your life now, but at least it feels that way. But, right? Like, I just wouldn't send my 7th or 8th grader. I did send my high schoolers. Both my kids have done the Italy trip. But, yeah, I guess my whole concern is, one, it's a liability for the district. We keep having this conversation over and over about these international trips. But, at 7th grade, they're like 12. And so, then you get kids that are juniors and seniors. So they're 17 and 18. So these 12-year-olds, like, who are they rooming with? Are they in with?
Yeah, they're not allowed to room with high school kids. It's an EF tour rule that they have to be separated. And the company is very good at.
No, EF Tours is great. So if you only got, let's say, one middle schooler to go,
Yeah.
who is that kid sleeping with?
He'd be by himself, or she. They'd get their own room.
which is almost more concerning.
Yeah. That's not making it better, Luke. I know they can't be in with you either, because we don't allow that either.
Is there a reason we're going down to the 7th grade?
Oh, we always have. It's actually been 6th, 7th, and 8th.
Oh my gosh,
It's
I
always been
remember,
middle
yes.
school. I remember when Katie went into 6th grade, they were going to like Ireland that year, and Adrian Larson was like, "Here, sign your kid up," and I was like, so, yeah. I guess it's at the parent's discretion. That's the only thing. The board can only approve based on the facts that we have. We're not there to parent, so.
Until something terrible happens to the kid and they
Well,
get
it's a
kidnapped.
liability issue anytime,
Yeah,
no matter what age they are.
I think that these are great trips, and I think that the kids are really lucky to be able to go on them. I can't in good conscience support these anymore using tax credits and having them be stamped with Fountain Hills Unified School District. I think that you can do it through EF Tours. I think that you can advertise to our students, but I think it's a liability. I think we know it's a liability after some of the concerns that were raised a couple years ago with what happened on a trip, and then we had COVID, and now we have a war. And I can't in good conscience, and has nothing to do with you and Mr. Peterson. I've been on this for a long time. I will support whatever the board decides, but that's a lot of tax credit money that we're losing out at the district to pay for, other things. And I just think it's too much of a liability to have, approval from the district.
Patrick, did you have a comment? No.
Yes, Mr. Sir.
Yeah, I, based on the discussion we had, I don't know, a month or two, whatever it's been now, I agree with Wendy. I think, the tour company does a great job. And I am all in favor of bringing kids into the world, not just to Fountain Hills. But I don't know that there's any real reason that the district should be involved in this. I said that last time, and I still feel that way. So I'll do whatever I can to help the students go, but I don't think it's any more possible to have the school district sponsor these overseas trips.
I worry about the liability, but I understand the whole tax credit thing. There's a lot of kids that are not able to pay for this out of their pocket, and so collecting tax credits sometimes is helpful. So, the liability bothers me, but I understand the tax credit purpose, so I'm probably on the opposite page.
Good. Any other questions or comments?
Will you be surprised, because Richard and I took our 2 kids, Adam and Maggie, to Washington, D.C., and we went through history with them. Gosh, I never really got out of the Capitol without seeing everything, but the kids too.
Any comments about the trip to Italy?
I think it's a good learning experience.
you're gonna see a whole nother country. I think it's a great experience.
All right, do we have a motion?
I move that the board approve the trip to Italy.
All those in favor, please say aye.
You don't have a second yet.
Yeah.
Oops,
I
you're
was
right,
just
I
gonna
don't
say
have a
I-
second
I
yet.
was gonna say I second it.
Thank you, Mrs. Rutkowski. So now that we have the second, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
All right, the ayes have it. We have approved the trip to Italy on May 29th, 2023 through June 8th, 2023.
Thank you.
I have one more comment. I still want the signatures stating that they understand they can't get their tax credits back if they paid by tax credits.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks.
I still wanna take my kids to Boston. There's a lot of history there. A lot of history.
And the next item on the agenda, we're moving on to the Indian policies and procedures. Dr. Sweeney, I know you definitely have an introduction for us on this.
There is.
Yes, I do. Madam President, members of the governing board and guests, this next item for your consideration and approval are updated Indian policies and procedures as required as part of the Impact Aid grant application process. Last week, Chris Alexander and I met with Kathy Quintana, Liara Thompson, and Mavis Jackson from the Fort McDowell Yavapai Nation Education Division for an official tribal consultation. During that meeting, we discussed a variety of ways in which we can work together to improve the experience of our Native American students and their families in our schools. It was a very productive conversation, and among other things, we did review this document together. One of the things I've said several times since that meeting is that we need to collectively, from the governing board level down to the classroom level, we need to be more deliberate and more conscientious in working to improve the relations between FHUSD and Fort McDowell Yavapai Nation. I think these revised policies and procedures are a step toward that goal. You'll notice they focus primarily on communication. There are some other details in there as well, but I think this is a good step in that direction, and I know in speaking with board members individually, it was expressed by at least two members, just concerned about, are we able to do what we say we're going to do in there? And we thoughtfully considered that before making those proposals, and the one specifically related to a survey of Fort McDowell parents. Liara and I met this morning as previously planned to draft a survey that we intend to use as a pilot this spring. And we actually have that drafted, and we'll finalize by next Friday. And we both feel very confident that we can deliver that survey and with the help of Fort McDowell personnel, get information back that is meaningful to all parties, and that will be shared back with the Fort McDowell community. So I strongly recommend approval of this, and I'm glad to answer any questions that you may have.
I will say I appreciate a bit more formalization around our relationship, because we do have an obligation to service that portion of our student community in a slightly different way than I don't wanna, I feel like if I say it this way, it's gonna come off potentially bad. But, there are requirements around how we service that community, just like if we had ESL learners or, SPED students, and formalizing what we're doing so it's on paper, so we know what we're committing to, and the nation knows what we are committing to deliver to them, and so then we can hold each other accountable, I think is very important.
I agree with you, it is important.
Yes, Mr. Sarver.
Again, I just wanted to thank those involved, because the current one, whatever format that's in these days, needed to have this, so that the communication is on the same page, first of all, because I've known that we can go like this when it comes to working with the tribal members and their parents, especially. And some of the ideas in here go back. We had a non-voting member of the board sit up here back when we were in the Boys and Girls Club, and that worked out well, but there was no real outcome to that, so that kind of fell apart. So I'm glad you're talking about doing that again, because there's a whole new generation coming off of that property over there, and I think it's good that we're thinking outside the box again.
Agreed. Any other comments? Okay, I will go ahead and move that we approve the Indian policies and procedures as presented.
I second it.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? No opposition, the motion passes. That was our final action item for this evening. We are now moving on to information and discussion items. We have some policy regulations and a policy exhibit. So the first, so I guess just to give the rest of the board a reminder, we did have ASBA complete a policy audit probably around last spring, I think it was, right?
Yeah.
And then through this fall, we were working with Superintendent Glass on making some updates to our policies that weren't in alignment with the ASBA standard policies, and then also looking into some of our regulations that were potentially outdated or areas where the standard policy from ASBA didn't really fit what we did in practice, and so we wanted to implement a regulation that then matched what we do in practice so that we have it documented and in writing so that there's no confusion, right? So this is continuing in that work. So policy GCQA is about professional staff reduction in force, and there's a couple documents in our board packet that are there as points of reference for some options that we could use in the wording of this regulation. So we did get from Krista this evening, for your reference, the actual policy. And then, like I said, in the packet that you received as the PDF, we have 2 example regulations. So this isn't something that has to be voted on at all, because regulations can be put in place as well as exhibits without the board actually adopting them. Again, this is information and discussion, so the point is to get some feedback from the board on some of the language in these example regulations for GCQA so that we can model our own policy.
Oh,
But
maybe.
you can look at that.
So basically, so I remember going through these in our working session. And
Yes.
So this is just what we all had decided on in our working session, or
The
did we
two-
just skip them?
The 2 that are here were ones that we hadn't completely tackled previously.
Got it.
So there's 2 examples of regulations for GCQA that were pulled from other districts that we could either say, yeah, we like this one, let's just take that one, or we can say we like this piece from this one and this piece from that one, and let's kind of smush them together to make our own.
Got it.
Well, I like the second one, so.
It's definitely more detailed.
Right, exactly.
I like the smushing them together.
I think the big thing from me, going back again, being the old guy here, we don't want to handcuff administration to making the right decision on their side when it comes to risks. But on the other hand, we want to make sure that in the best interest of our students, that the changes that are made are based on their success.
Yeah, no, I mean, I like the second one too. I mean, obviously, it's May 1st. I don't know if that is specific to this particular example, but I would hope that we would, if we needed to reduce staff, we would know that ahead before contracts went out.
Yeah, we could certainly modify that date to be more in line with what we do in practice.
And I remember when we spoke about this last time, it was more just being clear, and I think this one does that the governing board doesn't just randomly decide we're gonna have a reduction in force.
Right.
It is the superintendent and principals who bring that to our attention and ask for approval of that.
Yes. And I don't think right now, Dr. Sweeney, am I correct that currently if we had a RIF in personnel that, is this how they're notified, right? This policy that we're looking at says by first class mail or hand delivery. How would we notify right now for a RIF?
We would notify through internal communications here in the district.
So they're.
We wouldn't, I don't remember the last time we've
Had
notified
to do-
somebody.
right. What?
I'll tell
You
we
don't
still
have your
that.
mail back?
We
No
might have
delivery?
certified mail for certain things.
Yeah.
but,
I mean,
I think those were called pink slips at one point.
You know, on some
Yeah.
of the
You're right.
elevated things, we may hand deliver a letter on site.
Yeah.
Either through district or ask a site administrator to,
Yeah.
deliver this to.
I would hope that we would do that rather than someone opening up
Their mail
their
and-
door and
yeah.
signing for a letter,
Yeah.
letting them know that. I do like the language in the first one that I might be missing it, but that we will always, there will never be a reduction in force until normal attrition is relied upon as the first means. And that we do this only if attrition doesn't accomplish.
Yes.
I do like making sure that that is clear.
Okay.
I didn't see that in the second one, and I do think that that's important to clarify.
Can we look at these
Yeah.
and kind of wordsmith them and then
100%.
maybe bring it back at either our next at the work study session?
Yeah, well, because it's just again, a regulation, it doesn't actually have to be
Right.
approved as an action item, so we can totally revisit this at the work study session, and it's just kind of an informal, yes, we're all good with the wording, and then we put it on policy bridge.
Yeah, I think now that we kind of know where we're going with this, it might be better if we just wordsmith them and then come back with, an idea.
Absolutely, okay. That's what we'll do for regulation under GCQA. For BEDH, which is the next one regarding public participation at board meetings, included in the packet is the actual policy for your reference. And then included as well is a regulation, the regulation that we have in place today that has some strike-throughs as well as red lines. We had discussed this one in the past, and we've kind of been operating under these actions because we all thought that the regulation had been updated and published, but it hadn't been published. So apologies to the public for our following a regulation that we had all discussed and thought had been posted and it hadn't. So before we went ahead and posted this regulation, just wanted to get the board's eyeballs on it again to make sure that we were all in agreement before we did actually make sure this time that it got published. Any questions or comments on this one?
Well, we have the 15, and I did say I was gonna go through and redline this, and that was on my to-do list, and it, obviously, I never completed that. But this one that we have in here is that we only allow 15 minutes for public commentary, which that clearly does not happen. But we do.
Well, and so then that's the question, is that, would we like to do that in practice? Allow a total of 15 minutes, which would mean that if, right now we limit speakers to 3 minutes regardless of how many speakers we have. But we could also say that the total speaking time is 15 minutes, so if we had more, if we had 10 speakers, obviously that's not gonna fit in 15 minutes. So either, as noted in the policy, if multiple people are coming to speak on the same topic, they can kind of select a couple representatives to speak for them because they're all talking about the same thing, or we can just shorten the time and say, okay, there's 10 of you, we're gonna give you a minute and a half each.
I would go with, I always think we should hear from the public.
Yeah.
They're the ones that elected us. Those are, the people that we should be listening to, whether it be parents or community members, whatever. So I'm never good at telling people they can't speak.
Right, I agree.
I think 15 minutes is really short.
It is. It takes 30 seconds just for people to walk up and
Exactly.
walk back.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So I'm not really good with having like a specific time period. I would rather it say, you know, just like with the 3 minutes, at the board's discretion.
Okay.
That, you know, if we get, you know, 20 speakers, we can't take an hour, you know, the board has other business to deal with. But I don't think that we should have an actual minute.
Okay.
Other than the 3 minutes. So I'm good with the 3 minutes, but I don't think we should have like a certain time period of the meeting.
Yeah, and the other thing that's not in here that we talked about was, because we did take out having people say their address for
Yes.
something, for
Right.
a matter of safety.
Right.
But I think it is important for the form to have who they are, if they teacher, parent, community member.
Right, we did have that.
And then what they want to, like, very clearly, like, even if we put a list, what they want to talk about, because we can't get into the business of someone saying, you know, put on the list, I want to talk about blank, and then they come up and they, you know, say something else that may or may not be appropriate. And my only other thing would be making sure that we can clarify, because it is seen and heard when people hear things up at public comment that it is fact, and they aren't always facts. We hear lots of things that are not facts, that we be given the ability to clarify, instead of just the words that are, you know, yeah, I know we can't discuss something that's not on the agenda, but just, I think, you know, we can, if someone says something nasty about us, we're allowed to say something back, whatever. I think it's more important to clarify misstatements.
Yeah.
So that they're not taken as fact by whoever's listening, the
Well, or
minutes and
just-
everything else.
As with this evening's public comments where we needed some more information, can you explain
Yes.
where you saw that so that we have a better understanding?
Yeah, but we heard lots of misinformation, and it would be nice to be able to say, actually, blank, 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 and we can't. And I even have to be vague here, right? And, you know, or see this, or, you know, it's just not fair to anyone when we can't be transparent. You know, it's just as not fair to the people commenting as it is to us, where, you know. So I think we could use that fact check, sort of point of clarification, in a useful way as needed.
We have to be careful though, because we can't write the regulation so that it completely supersedes the policy.
Right, well, and it's not even just policy, it's open meeting law,
Yes.
it's a law.
I know.
So,
I know.
yeah, we can't write a policy that
It's not
goes
on the agenda,
against it.
I know, but.
Yes, Mr. Sun.
Well, I think it's also important that we let people know within our regulations that they can submit any additional documents that they want to the board, and it will become part of the minutes.
Of the minutes.
Because, you know, they come with their cell phones, they can't do much about that, but they could send something at a later date to Krista, and it could be included in the documentation for the minute, for the meeting.
They could even send it by email to the board won't respond, but
Yeah,
but we all read our email, or should.
we get it now.
We get it.
Yeah, and sometimes it is more effective, so.
Well, and sometimes, I mean, I personally don't mind getting emails because it gives me time to ponder on them. And if it's something that, you know, we read, it may be worthy of an agenda item. And so then it's at the president's discretion to put it on the agenda with the superintendent. So sometimes when you're sitting here and you listen to the same things over and over again, you kind of, you know, not everybody is great at public speaking, not everybody gets their facts out. And so it also gives time for clarification at a later time that the board could address, like, legally.
Okay, so I've got a couple notes on this one, and I'll work on a few more adjustments and then bring that back. Either I'll have Krista distribute it to the board via email and get some commentary that way, or we'll include it in the study session for our next meeting.
Hey, Nadia?
Yeah.
Just reading down further, so you could actually use this line back to the 15-minute thing.
Yes.
So under the 3 minutes, it says, this time period may be extended at the option of the board president or upon request by 3 or more
Just
board
use
members.
like that
So you can also put that
wording.
under the 15 minutes, that if it's something that the board feels we should definitely hear, we can extend that time based on board. So I would just reiterate that.
Sounds good. And then the last one, JJE, student fundraising activities. Again, the policy is here for your reference. What we're actually looking at is the exhibit. We didn't previously have an exhibit, and we obviously have had some discussion recently about what are acceptable fundraisers, and then if somebody wants to have a fundraiser, how do they submit to their site to, I want to have this fundraiser at the site? We need an exhibit, so here's an exhibit.
Okay.
So if there's,
A form. David
yes,
doesn't
it's
want
a
any more
form,
paper.
it's a form. In working with Krista, we did look at examples from several other districts, and some of the forms were a little bit more complicated and required like 5 different signatures on them, and we were trying to keep it a little more simplistic and leave it much more to the site administrator's discretion and not have it be so micromanaged, documented type of thing, like, yeah, so that's why, like I said, it's a simple form, and that was intentional.
Yeah, no, I think just having the sponsor's signature, because all clubs have sponsor, and then the site administrator, I mean, I don't see why it would need to go farther than that, so.
Is
Unless
this
you all
for,
have a reason why.
I'm sorry, Joe. Is this for athletics then as well?
It would be for any organizations, and we kind of went through a list of different organizations that have fundraisers today to have an event, yes.
So like for athletics, the athletic teams are usually fundraising under boosters. So would they be required to get approval on this form? Because they're actually an outside organization, just like PTO, affiliated with the school, but not, we have no jurisdiction over them.
Right.
So for like the car wash.
It specifically says in the policy, fundraising activities by students on school premises, but that would likely be interpreted as student organizations. So not the PTO, because we can't control them. And they should be utilizing a different request form anyway. Like if the PTO wants to have an activity on district property, that wouldn't fall, even if it's a fundraising activity, that doesn't really fall under this student fundraising activities umbrella.
Yes, it gets a little convoluted
Yes.
when you have these outside organizations, and I think the focus on this needs to be school-sponsored student organizations, approved fundraising types.
Right.
When the other groups, PTO can do a raffle somewhere, schools can't.
Right.
And they can't do it on school property. So I think, this policy, I would just stay focused on school-sponsored.
So like if the boosters doing the car wash on school property, they wouldn't have to fill out this form.
The boosters probably shouldn't be doing the fundraising activity on school property.
But, so it's a football team, the football team's raising money that goes right back to the football team, but the football team doesn't fall under.
They're not a
nonprofit.
501c3.
So the money is collected and accounted for by the booster club.
It would be much cleaner if that event took place. The coach went to the site administrator, said, we want to do a fundraiser on Saturday, use some sort of form. The administrator said, yep, we agree. That money goes into that student activities account or club account and keep it in-house, managed all the way through that process. Now, if they want to do one out of Rio Verde Park on a Saturday evening and the Booster Club wants to do that, that's a different matter. But again, using school resources, using school property, they really ought to stick with.
And by policy, our policy in certain cases, Title 15, PTO and the Booster Club and any other outside organization, even though that they're focused on our students, would have to pay rent for using our property. And we have a
We can
schedule,
choose to.
we have a schedule for rent.
Yeah, we do have a schedule for rent. And we do have a lower rent fee for those organizations that are.
So, but if the football team does it,
It just has to be collected by the school, not the
It
boosters.
doesn't go to the booster club. They can help, but they'll never see the money.
which is actually how I think it does go into the school account, but I think that's probably a question for the coaches and
'Cause you
Evelyn
guys-
and.
When people make donations, they get a tax credit receipt, right?
They do.
So yeah, so that's
So then it
going
has to
right
go through
into,
the
it's
school.
not going into the boosters, it's
No,
going,
it is a booster club donation receipt.
No.
There is, I was giving out tax credit.
Oh, just as like,
Forms.
you can also do this.
Yeah, you can also do this, but, it was.
yeah, that would probably have to change. Okay.
Any other questions about the exhibit?
No, I mean, sadly, I just don't wanna make this harder for our kids who need to raise money, so, I hope it doesn't have unintended consequences.
If I may add another sort of page to this, one of the things when we started having some conversations around fundraisers was, one, the approved school activities one. I've seen in my own experience where some good-natured group of students gets together and says, we want to raise money for fill in the blank. And they're not a school-sponsored organization, and all of a sudden they're doing some fundraising activity on a campus somewhere, and there is no club account to put the money into, and again, their intentions are pure and perfect. But the process of that and the
On
position
school
it puts the
grounds,
school in
yes.
is bad and out of compliance with the law. So our discussions were first, the school-sponsored activity, whether it's club, whether it's team, whatever that may be. And then on the fundraising types of things, to have administrative approval that there is good judgment, and we've certainly all heard examples of things people have wanted to do to raise money that sounded like a great idea to a 15-year-old, and it's not a great idea. And so that's where, that kind of filter of approval comes in. So I think people can still be entrepreneurial, they can still be successful, and they can still raise money for their funds, but there needs to be some bumpers in place to make sure that it stays compliant with the law.
If there aren't any additional comments, it didn't sound like there were any changes to this exhibit, then we can go ahead and get this one in place, and we will continue to work on wordsmithing the other two regulations that we looked at this evening. Sorry, my device locked on me. No, I got it. It just kind of fell asleep on me when we get back to the agenda. And that was our last item. So, future action, if you have an item that you'd like to see on a future board meeting agenda, you can reach out to Krista. Dates of upcoming meetings, Wednesday, April 27th, 2022, we have a work study session that begins at 5 p.m. here in the Learning Center. And then Wednesday, May 10th, Wednesday, no, Tuesday. Tuesday, May 10th. Tuesday, because Wednesday, May 11th will be senior recognition night, which is always a really fun evening. I hope everybody can make it. So because of that, we are having our board meeting on Tuesday, May 10th. That is a business meeting starting at 6:30 p.m. And with that, I move we adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, meeting adjourned.
Good job, Nadia. Tuesday, May 10th is our meeting. No, I got that. Wednesday, May 11th is senior recognition.